Eric Dombach here at the Coach's Coach, and I want to welcome you back to the Million Dollar Business Coaching Firm interview series. And today I've got my good friend Karl Bryan on the line. Karl, thanks for being here today. How are you?
No problem, buddy. Good. How's it going with you, Eric?
Just awesome. I really appreciate you jumping on the call. You were one of my favorite business coaching firm builders because you didn't just build $1 million plus business coaching firm. You've actually built two. So you've got some awesome things to share and to teach. So again, thanks for jumping on the call and adding some value here. Ready to jump right in. And why don't, for those who are listening who don't know you already, why don't you go ahead and just describe your background in business just prior to building your coaching firm, and then we'll plunge into the business coaching things.
Okay, yeah, look, I'm just one of those, a bit like yourself, a bit of a serial entrepreneur. Actually started when I was 14 years old. I was just, which sounds, I don't know how it sounds, but I was just a 14-year-old kid, and the old man kicked me outside and said, hey, man, go make some money, and I went and applied for a couple jobs, and I was pretty short. I'm still short to this day, but I was super short then, and, applying for a job wasn't going too good, and my old man's a bit of a he's a tough one to please at the best of times, so I pretty much didn't want to have to come home and say I couldn't get a job, so I found a way. I was actually sat down with my mom. She said, look, why don't you take the lawnmower, push it around? I started pushing it around. Next thing you know, I had a lot of success really early, ended up hiring a buddy, but I started up, pushing lawnmowers around, and we did window washing, lawn mowing, did pretty well, and it sort of just took off from there. And then actually at the age of 21, which I suppose is relevant, I actually got sponsored at the age of 21 by the president of Small Business Australia. So I was touring around Australia, drinking beer like good old 21-year-olds like to do, and I decided I want to stay around. And conveniently, there was a girl involved, which I know that's a surprise to everybody listening. So I wanted to stay in Australia, and I got introduced to the president of National Small Business Australia. He sponsored me, and effectively what we were doing, business coaching didn't even exist back then. That's back in '93. But effectively what we were doing is, we were doing a lot of coaching / consulting and helping these small business owners. So I got a little bit of a leg up, and I was effectively his guy behind the scenes, where he'd walk into businesses and do all sorts of, just implement strategies and tactics and show them how they could get their ducks in a row, which was sponsored by the government. And then I would, behind the scenes, do a little bit of help for them and kick them in the pants. And, I was sort of the guy behind the scenes in the computer. So, and that was at a pretty young age, and I learned a lot. So that's what kicked me off. That's what got me going. And since then, I haven't really done a heck of a lot but coaching.
But you
sound like about what you're looking for there? That's what I did before I got coaching, bud.
Yeah, and you've built more than a few businesses over the years, but I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go. So let's talk about, when did you actually start your first business coaching firm? Where was it located? Take us into that season.
Okay, so that was back in about '93. So I then went on and worked with him for a few years. But then I went on. Actually, I started up a hockey business. I lived in Australia and actually started up a hockey business, like all good Canadian kids. I'm pretty passionate about hockey. Sounds like a cool thing to do. And so I started that, and I sort of took off and pursued a passion for a number of years. But I really got back into coaching in about 2004 is when I started, built up a consulting company and got things cranking. So I suppose 2004 is when I got my start in business coaching officially. And the industry existed. Like I said, in '93 it didn't even exist, but in 2004 it did. So I sort of figured, look, I didn't know what the heck it was, but I figured that's effectively what I was doing. And 2004 I got a leg up and I got cranking straight away.
Cool. So serial entrepreneur from 1993 roughly till up in 2004, you started your first coaching business. Okay, so let's talk about the growth of the business that you now call No Results, No Fee, which I think is the business that really represents your first attempt to build a business coaching firm with associate coaches working for you and all that. Let's talk about the first few years of building that, the growth of your revenue, and then we're going to talk a lot about your experience with associate coaches and what you've learned. But what were the first few years and the revenue growth related to No Results, No Fee, your first business coaching firm?
What would they be? About year one, some time ago, but probably 250 grand is what we did in annual turnover. It's not profit, but that's annual revenues. Year two, probably doubled that. I'd say we went to 500K in year two. Year 3, we had a bit of a boomer, but we were going from strength to strength and doing some pretty cool stuff. I ended up licensing it. We did $5.5 million. We were doing like $400,000 a month in new coaching clients. We had some serious lead generation going on. We'd send out about 1 million emails at a time. So yeah, that's the numbers. They look something like that. And the licensing obviously was a big, that added some significant revenue there.
Excellent, man. So 250,000 to 500,000, then boom, 5.5 million, 400,000 per month. You were starting to license. So that period of licensing would have been where you really brought in an associate coaches to, you figured after a couple, 2-3 years, you had something good going. Now you wanted to expand your reach by bringing on associate coaches. So before we get into a discussion about how all that worked and what you learned, things you should and shouldn't do, etc., let's talk a little bit more about the business itself. What were the products and services you were selling, the relative percentage of each in your revenue mix, and then, what were you doing to market those things? Because I know you did some amazing things in that period of time. So tell us about that.
Yeah, small business coaching, foundationally, what I've learned in business is I always found like there's 2 expressions that I use, or focus and follow through is where I've had all my success. Every time I've tried to come up with something new, reinvent a wheel, change things around, I've normally paid a little bit of a financial price for it, both in time and money. So what I have found, and really what we did, look, we sold a small business coaching program. We were good at it. That's what we promoted. Every time we came up with something new, it was a new way to sell the system. Every time we came up with something new, it was a new way to add value to our small business client to make sure that they were getting the absolute best experience. So really, fundamentally, what we did is we sold a small business coaching program that, again, it went well, and our conversions and our lead generation, the sales process to get to that small business owner was a reasonably impressive one. And then also what we did is we then trained the coaches. Like we would charge $45,000 to bring a coach into a room. We train them for 5 days. We take them out into the real world. We'd literally get their clients for them, right? So we didn't say, oh, well, look, this is how you do it, and this is the way it works, and here are the scripts, good luck, and cheer for them. We'd literally go and sign up clients for them, right, as part of their training. So that was the second thing that we did. So we trained the coaches, and I believe we did it at a pretty impressive level. And then we also had the small business coaching program that we built up and that would be adjusted slightly depending upon the individual small business, their numbers, their needs, and the size of their company.
Excellent. And your small business coaching program at the time was selling for what per month, roughly?
It again adjusted a little bit, but just call it $10,000, and you'd be pretty close to the mark. We had a home study course, like a bit of a do-it-yourself thing that would be more $5,000, and a bit, when somebody was light on. And then $10,000 was like our primary offering. And again, and this might come to what we're going to get to in a little bit, but what I would teach the coaches, when I had a coach, what I would do is, we'd sort of teach having, gold, like, silver, gold, and platinum level programs, like 3 levels. But what I found is when I sent a new coach into the real world and I gave them options to present to the client, conversions would plummet, right? They just kill their conversions. So what I did is I sent them out there with 1 price point, right, 1 sale, and effectively we found that conversions, they just find a way to, just to push through and manage to get that $10,000. If I gave them too many options to walk in there with, I found that hurt conversion. So matter-of-factly, the $10,000 offering.
Yeah, and that $10,000 you weren't requiring up front from the business owners themselves. Didn't you have them pay that out over time, as I recall?
Actually, well, what we did have, and this is pretty impressive, is that we had a relationship with a couple different banks. So what we would do is, and again, this process isn't quite as easy as it is. Like today, it would be a lot more difficult to put in place than it was then. What we do is we go to the bank, and effectively we would apply for financing through the bank, and normally in the way of a credit card. So then the bank would approve the client for the credit card. We already had a check made out that we would get the client to sign. We'd get the approval amount. So if they were approved for $7,000, then that check was written out for $7,000. If it was the full $10,000, then the full $10,000 check was filled out. So effectively, the client would fill out the paperwork. We'd take it to the bank. The bank would approve them. We would then sign the check, which they had already signed. We would sign it over. So effectively, the banks were actually financing the program. So our coaches, the majority of the time, were actually getting their their full amount of coaching for 12 months up front.
Great. So 10,000 over 12 months.
And of course, where they weren't approved.
Yeah.
That's right.
No, that's great. So $10,000 financed over 12 months, and the coaches were then doing the coaching.
Yeah, and I would recommend anybody to try, like, if you've got a coaching program, try find a leasing company, try find a financing company where you can get, the finance company to basically finance the program. You do the coaching, the finance company does the dinging of the credit cards at the end of the month, and it's a better relationship. Because what I've found is that when I'm your coach and you're paying me on a monthly basis, and every time your credit card doesn't go through or every time that check doesn't roll up, I need to phone and have that uncomfortable conversation with you. It's a relationship killer all day long. So you want to try to find a way to outsource that financing if you can. Not the easiest thing to do in 2007. It was 100 times easier to do than it is today, but those options are out there. You just sometimes need to get a little bit creative.
Good stuff. And then just one of the things that I liked about what you just said, and look, a lot of the other firm builders that I've been interviewing and so forth saying the same thing. We trained the coaches. A lot of times they paid something for the training, but we went out and got them clients. I love that. I love it. And it's so much better than, paying a huge amount of money for a franchise or something and then getting nothing but some scripts and some cheerleaders who work in the head office. So I like the way you were doing it. And what was the marketing method? Maybe the best marketing method that you used to get the clients for these guys.
Joint ventures times. Like, joint ventures is just what we did. Very good at it. Again, and with joint ventures, and if I were to explain it, I talk to a coach every week where they'll tell me, look, Karl, I get it, and I understand you talk about joint ventures, and more joint ventures. Works for you. I haven't had a lot of success. The reason why, and I equate it in a nice little analogy, is it's like getting a date with your wife versus getting a yes at the proposal, right? It was 100 times harder for you to get a date with your wife than it was a yes at the proposal, and the fact that the yes at the proposal was practically a formality if you'd done the things right up until that point. You need to come at these JVs with the same attitude. You need to roll up with flowers, you need to roll up in your best suit, and you need to make a massive impression quickly in order to get that relationship going, right? Like, let me give you an example. You're going to go to a radio station and you want to form a JV with them. Okay, well, go to the radio station, and let's say that, like, what I've got is a membership site. All intents and purposes, without knowing the nuts and bolts of it, let's just say that I have a 12-month membership on my do-it-yourself system that's $1,000. Well, go to the radio station and give them 10 free memberships up front to get the relationship started, accepting full well that 8 out of 10 times that relationship will go nowhere, and you will have wasted your time and your money and your memberships. But that's okay. So what the radio station now does is have $10,000 of value in their hand that you've brought to the relationship. They can give those free on the radio and say, hey, if you got a startup or a new business in 2013, want to kick some butt, be the 10th caller, and you'll win this, free 12-month, XYZ Business Academy, okay, or whatever your membership site, your program is. That's what I would call mine. Well, now that you've got a situation where they're going to get like a bunch of callers for those memberships, and effectively the 12th caller is going to win, but if they get 50 phone calls, they've got 50 people they can phone to sell their starter kit advertising program to, right? Well, guess what happens if that works really well and they've got a bunch of new leads to sell advertising? They're going to go through their 10 memberships and they're going to come back to you and say, what? Can I have another 10 memberships, please? Okay, well, that's the proposal. Right? But guess what? Your wife's now asking you instead of you having to ask her. Right? How powerful is that? So number one form of lead generation that we used is joint ventures. And very importantly, what we do is we bring a massive value proposition to the front end to make sure that we got that relationship going. Normally in the form of we will coach you at no charge in order to get this relationship started. And if that works out, then you send us a bunch of referrals on the back end if we do a good job. And if we stink and we do a poor job, just avoid our phone calls.
So now,
so joint ventures is the answer to your question in terms of my best marketing method, bar none.
Yep.
But that's the way you need to approach it. Is you need to be willing to go in and lose up front in order to get it going. We'd also do live seminars on steroids, so live seminars and focus groups, and we also had a formalized referral program where we would pay $1,000 per referral to our client. So if they paid $10,000 for a program, we would show them how they could earn back the entire $10,000 by sending us their contacts, referrals, friends, and other business associates they do business with. So we had a formalized referral program, not just a referral program asking. It was formalized, and that once they got to different triggers, they got different things awarded to them. And if they sent 10, we flew them to Australia, by the way.
Very nice, very nice. So a lot of joint ventures. You would pile people into live seminars, and then you would book them into a sales meeting where you'd present the $10,000 program. And as I recall you telling me one other time, you would spend an entire day, after you do a live seminar, you would spend an entire day and just do sales meeting after sales meeting after sales meeting and close these $10,000 deals. And that's how you landed coaching gigs for your coaches. Yeah?
Yeah. Well, and to the point where, actually, well, one step further, see, the JVs, like live seminars, is how we, pretty much promoted always our coaching program. So the JV would invite people to the live seminar. Mm-hmm. Right? And in the live seminar, we would promote them through, email, all sorts of different direct mail, email, what have you, right? Again, put people into joint venture. I would recommend, if I'm going to take on a small business client as a coach, I normally wouldn't take them on unless they've seen me in an educational environment, for the simple reason that it makes your relationship a lot harder. Because what happens, like, it's not magic building a business, right, and helping these guys. Well, if your first few strategies don't work that well, you need to make sure you get a high level of preeminence in order to make that happen. Like, in order for them to continue to buy into you and to trust you and like you enough to say, I'm going to keep rolling with this individual, even if the first couple initiatives don't knock it out of the park.
Yeah, very well said.
So just be clear, those strategies were designed to drive people to a presentation, and then the presentation was designed to do exactly what you just said. I would literally, after the presentation, just sit in a room, boom, 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 and we just sit through, we call it a sales and marketing audit, walk them through, and then sign them up into a, all intents and purposes, a $10,000 coaching program.
Okay, so you had a beautiful little machine cooking there, $250,000 to $500,000, $5.5 million. You marketed, sold these contracts for your clients, and so forth. Now, let's just talk a little bit about, the associate business coaches. You brought quite a few guys in, and so let's just talk about that. When did you bring your first associate coach on? I think you said it was year 3, which is roughly, I forget what you said, 2007 or something. How many associate coaches did you bring into the firm to get up to that $5.5 million? And then let's just talk about, what did you learn? What were some of the challenges in getting associate coaches up to speed and productive?
Yeah, so look, good. I got to tell you, that right there was a learning curve, big time. Had 25 coaches zipping around, just doing our thing. Really what I found was that, you need to make sure, it's a bit like the captain of the hockey team. At some stage, somebody needs to stand up and be the guy that is going to lead by example on the rink, but also needs to be the guy who's going to be heard in the dressing room, right? And sometimes that's telling people to shut up, and sometimes that's telling them to speak, to speak up and stand up themselves. I would just say that leadership sounds like almost a cliche or a platitude, but leadership within the company is absolutely critical, and you need to be very, very careful who wears the C in your organization. Because the person at the top, the company will always be driven. It will always take on the culture and the personality of the person at the top. So you need to make sure that you have a high level of leadership within the company. Obviously, presumably that would fall on, the person that we're talking to and the guy building the company. And if it's not going to be you, you need to be very, very careful with who you put into that leadership role. It's no different than your family, right? You let your kids run, ragged, and you let them get away with a little bit too much. You don't necessarily pay the price that night, but you pay the price big time over the coming months and the coming years when your kid's no longer listening to you, right? So that leadership is mission critical. And I know, having, like, I think you actually call yours a huddle, Eric, right? Your company need to bring everybody together on a regular basis so they have a forum where they can air their views, they can be heard. People support things they help create, right? So that leadership can't just be, okay, well, here's what we're going to do in like a dictatorship. It needs to be an environment and a situation where they can have some input. And even sometimes you'll hear things from your organization where you're not necessarily completely bought in, but you need to implement some of this stuff if you feel like somebody, like they need to feel some ownership over it. So if every idea they bring to you, you shoot down and just do it your own way, that is not good leadership times 10. You need to make sure that you're adopting and taking on some of these things, sometimes against your better judgment in some cases. Obviously, be careful there, but make sure that they feel like they're building this thing, not just you, and that they're your yes man.
Yep, for sure. Now,
so encapsulate that. Leadership is critical.
Yep.
Absolutely critical.
Yep. Now, at some point after you had your 25 coaches on, I know you kind of jumped through some hoops and kind of went to a whole nother level by taking your business online and then moved from dozens of coaches to hundreds of coaches. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I know that one of the things that you began to experience at some point before you made the shift from dozens to hundreds, and again, we'll talk about that more in a minute, but one of the shifts was wanting to move away from the the live seminar, sign up coaching clients, train your coaches to be coaches, and you wanted to do it in a more automated fashion. But before we talk about that, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced with actually teaching associate business coaches how to coach using your system? Motivating them, getting them to produce, getting them to sell for themselves. Did they sell for themselves after they had been with you, or what happened there?
Okay, a great lesson is this. This is what I have found. If I sat down, if somebody listening here came to me and said, "Look, Karl, I want to come work for you, and I want to be a business coach underneath your guidance," I would say one thing to them: rank your ability to sell from 1 to 10. Okay, and then they would either say 7 or above, and my conversation would continue, or they would say below 7, as in 6 or below, and the conversation is basically over. And that's not to be funny; it's that coaching the client is a sales job in and to itself. The best coaches, there is not I'll call it a successful business coach, right? Which obviously there's anomalies and exceptions to this, but the ones that are successful are the ones that understand and are able to sell at a very high level. And you need to be 7 from what I've found to start, and then we can take you from a 7 to a 9. But below that, I think that you're going to have a tough time being super successful in coaching. And by the way, but here's the good news. If you're sitting there thinking, okay, well, I suck at sales, so I guess Karl's saying I'm screwed, right? No, that's not it at all. Guess what you do? Go find yourself a partner. And the mistake that most people do is they find themselves a partner, and guess what that partner looks like? People like themselves, so the person you choose as your business partner tends to have the same skill set as you. Horrible mistake. You need to go and partner with somebody with the opposite experiences. So if you're a really good coach, you need to partner with somebody, and that doesn't necessarily mean a 50-50 partnership, because that can be a little bit of a battle unto itself, but I'm talking about bringing somebody else into your company to work with you, where you've got sales and you've got the coaching both looked after, because very few people have those two dynamics. Like, I personally suck as a coach, right? Not scared to admit it. I am no good at coaching, but I am very good at the sales, right? So you're either good at sales or you're good at coaching. So I would recommend, firstly, if you want to be really good standalone business coach, you better be good at sales. And if you're not good at sales, you better go get some training from a guy like Eric, right? Or partner with somebody with that skill set that you do not have.
Really good, man. I mean, one of the things I've always taught firm builders, it's in my book, The $1 Million Business Coaching Firm. Hey, good coaches need to have background in selling the invisible, selling the intangible, business-to-business services, and then they've also got to have the right psychometric profile to be able to coach effectively, holding people accountable and all the rest. But if you're missing either of those, boy, you're going to be in trouble. Now, you brought on these 25 coaches. What percentage of those were 7 or above? Now, I'm imagining that when you came up with this rule, 7 or above in sales is probably a rule you developed in the trenches and were probably in a lot of pain. So just out of curiosity, out of these 25 that you brought on, how many of them were, in your experience, 7 or above, and what did you do about it?
Yeah, again, we had to go into sales training. The reality is that coaches that are, people that are attracted to coaching as a rule, again, they love the idea of coaching, and that almost automatically means that they're probably not the best salespeople. So, there was a decent percentage of those that were, probably a little bit below 7, but we went into sales training, and notwithstanding, look at, there's a pretty good sales process. In fact, let me walk. So if I'm sitting there listening and I'm a coach that says, okay, well, look, I'm not too great at the sales, Karl. Give me your best advice on making me good at sales of a coaching service. And this is it. Just imagine this. If you were standing there and I handed you a Band-Aid, just, you don't know me, I don't know you, I hand you a Band-Aid, you'd likely look at that Band-Aid and say, why in the world is this guy handing me a Band-Aid, and say no thank you, right? But if I had a razor blade and I accidentally nicked you on the elbow, and all of a sudden there was a little bit of blood trickling down, and I reached into my pocket and I said, here's a Band-Aid, you'd say thank you, probably wash your elbow up and chuck that Band-Aid on straight away, right? Well, when you sit with a small business owner and you pull out a Band-Aid, in other words, you pull out your coaching too early, you pretty much kill the sale. What you need to do is cut their arm and let a little bit of blood trickle down. And then say, okay, Karl, well, how do you do that? The way you do that is by asking them a series of questions, right? So you sit down. The first thing you do is you build rapport. Why did you start your business? When did you start your business? Tell me a little bit more about you and your family and why you decided to become an electrician, right? So you're building rapport, showing them that you care. And then you say, do you have a business plan? No. Do you have a marketing plan? No. Do you have a marketing budget? No. Do you know how many leads you got last week, last month, in the last quarter? No. Do you know what your conversions are? No. Effectively what I'm doing is I'm throwing about 100 questions at you in a row, right, that fundamentally I already know the answer, because I wouldn't be sitting there with you if you had all this stuff, which nobody tends to do, by the way. If you already had all this stuff lined up, I'm not sitting in your office. Okay, so you ask them those questions. There's no way that somebody who just said no 50 times out of 65 questions can look across the table, look you in the eye and say, no, I don't need help coaching, right? There's just no way that that's possible, right? So that's where you pull out the Band-Aid at the end of those questions. And what we're talking about here is simply a sales process. But somebody who doesn't understand sales and doesn't get it on an instinctive level normally doesn't find that, and they can't help themselves. They can't wait to start telling the business owner how much they're going to help them. But the problem is if they don't understand that there is a need there, they will not take you up on that too early. And if I may, I want to throw in something else on that note. The other thing is that I've got over probably 1,000 pieces of marketing material, right, for my coaching company, and there isn't a single, the word coach doesn't find itself on one of those 1,000 pieces. And the reason why is that you don't want to introduce yourself. I don't know that you want to introduce coaching too quickly, because what you do, it's a bit like introducing, like if you're a realtor, the last thing that you want to say is, hi, I'm a realtor, because you give away everything you're about to move towards way too early. Okay, so good marketing from my standpoint is, basically entering the conversation that somebody's having in their head, right? So what they're talking to their wives about before they go to bed is lead generation, getting to the front page of Google, marketing, improving their sales process, improving their sales conversions.
Yeah.
So I talk to them in that manner, as opposed to in a manner talking coaching too early. I mean, it kills your conversions without you realizing it. So
the number one thing that you found yourself doing to help your associate coaches, if I'm hearing you right, is teaching them to sell using a sales process. And your journey is a fascinating one to me, because when I was building my first $1 million business coaching firm, I had all these coaches working for me. I think it was 7, a total of 7 or 8, and then 4 of them bought my firm from me. But the number one thing that I worked on, sales and a sales process. And then after I sold that, I just rolled out my system and sales process to coaches around the world, much as you've done. So let's transition now. You've got these 25 coaches, they're in their firm, they're doing their local thing, and you decided to go big, go global, go digital, and you built firm number 2, which I've got here on my screen now, Profit Before You Pay. I did have no results, no fee on my screen, but now I've got Profit Before You Pay. Let's talk about roughly when you decided to move beyond just kind of this 25-member coaching firm that was based in, I guess, Canada, right? Certain part of Canada, and then you decided to go big and go global. Tell me about that transition. When did it happen? Why did it happen? What were you thinking?
Yep. So, by the way, we did operate internationally, but predominantly, again, I'm in Canada. We were predominantly in Canada. Look, in 2008, the recession set in, right? And what you'll find is that when people go and write, like I explained earlier, how we go to the bank and effectively get these people approved for, 10, depending upon the coaching program, we had like an $8,000 program, a few different models. They would get approved for that amount, okay? get signed on. But what would happen is a lot of the time that money comes from equity in their home. That's effectively what people spend equity in their home like an ATM. Well, as you know, in 2008, people went from having, one, two, three, four, in some cases, $500,000, $1 million of equity in their home, and it literally halved overnight. In fact, so badly so that a lot of people were underwater. So not only did they no longer have the ATM and the equity in their homes, they literally they were, by walking away from their house, they were actually better off than sitting here and making this mortgage payment, right? Not a fun environment to be in, no doubt. Well, the writing on the wall is that if all these $10,000 programs, and again, we used to charge $45,000 to coach a coach, if the equity in their home went away, the writing on the wall said that, look, these $8,000, $10,000, $45,000 checks are about to dry up big time, right? So then I thought, okay, well, hang on a second, and I'm a reasonably quick study, right? You don't need to look too far to say, well, hang on a second, well, where is the marketplace going to go? Okay, and the marketplace is going to go to the internet, right? And small business owners are starting to use Google and being able to find their way around. Well, I said, well, look, I want to be the first in space to build an online coaching program that every small business owner can get. But I don't want them to have to pay $10,000 to get it. I want them to be able to pay $97 a month because everything on the internet sort of works its way towards free, right? So there's an argument to say I could have made it a whole lot more expensive. And if you've ever seen my online program, I mean, the opportunity and the value proposition is just on steroids. $97 is almost an insult to it. But unfortunately, reality is 101, that's what people want to pay, right? Or no, that's not what people want to pay. That's just the value of the internet. It gets diminished in terms of what they're willing to pay in that small business owner, right? So I said, okay, well, I want to build the first program to go into the internet to help small business owners. So I took that out, and knowing as a business coach myself and somebody who had trained, tons of business coaches and a lot, very, very successfully, I knew that a lot of the time that they would be absolutely desperate for a downsell, and they all needed this sort of brochure on steroids or like a drip campaign to keep in touch with the people that said maybe or the people that just couldn't be convinced on the given day. So I thought, hang on a second, I want to build this online coaching program, but I don't want to just go and plug in $97 members all day long. I want to be able to take this out, and I want to be able to touch the world. And the quickest and easiest way for me to do that is to network and use my expertise as a successful business coach and a guy who understands how to get a small business owner, but also my expertise on how to build, to help a small business owner grow. So I said, if I go to the business coaches and then rebrand this as their own, that will be the quickest and easiest way for me to make the greatest impact. And by the way, I'm going to make it so insanely inexpensive in the $97 a month that it must be impossible for somebody to say no in that, that small business owner. So that's effectively what happened when the recession set in. I said, hang on a second, I want to be first in space, which I was. That's pretty well documented. And I built this, and we now do well into 7 figures on the internet. 100% coaching online, to the point now my own business life, and I do a little bit of venture capital, and I do a little bit of, I just play around a little bit, because I just absolutely love business. If it's not online, I pretty much don't look at it.
Got it. Yep.
That's my rule.
So interesting, because you basically made a transition from, the original model, which was seminars, expensive, coaching programs. You made a transition and said, you had a lot of coaches working in your organization. You made a transition and said, I'm going to take it online, take it digital. So you built your first business coaching firm up to $5.5 million. But then after the transition, you got that up to over $1 million a year in online sales, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and we have 300 business coaches in 13 countries now, I believe, and growing all the time and doing a whole lot of, doing some pretty cool stuff. But that is, absolutely correct.
So it's interesting, though, because we still have business coaching, and if you think about what most business coaching franchises do, they're still doing the model that I did and that you did, which is find a coach, charge them a lot of money up front, and then make them go out and sell, coaching programs that range from $12,000 to $24,000 a month. And a lot of the business coaching franchises don't even have a finance option. So they're still doing what you and I were doing many years ago, charging a lot of money to the coaches, making the coaches charge a lot of money, and in a lot of cases, these franchisees are starving and they're hundreds of thousands of dollars broke later, right? So, what are you seeing in terms of your coaches, these 300 business coaches in 13 countries? How are they doing and how are they digging, working in your, I'm going to call this your second business coaching firm, but this is kind of business coaching firm number 2, which is transition from the old school kind of local business coach charging tons of money model. Now, how are your 300 business coaches doing and how are they digging, this new model, and what kind of money are they making, and are they still charging one-on-one coaching fees? And, give us some sense of that.
Yep. Okay. So, look, good question. And for every individual coach, they use it a little bit differently. The analogy that I'd give is think about it as let's just say business coach A, let's call him Dave. Dave signs on. And what I'd say to him is, Dave, I want you to think about it this way. You own McDonald's, okay? And then I've come along with hot apple pies. Okay, so Dave can give away his hot apple pies out the front of his McDonald's to bring people in to buy his hamburgers, right? Or when people come into Dave's shop to buy a burger, he can say, hey, do you want a hot apple pie with that? And make an extra $4 an order. Okay, or what he can do is take the hot apple pies, bundle it with a Coke, a Pepsi, some fries, call it a Happy Meal, and he's got a higher valued, higher end service, right? So that's the way that I encourage, as a business coach, I know, like since I was 21 years old, is that when I come into a small business owner and I make a dramatic change quickly, it never ends well for anybody. What I always try to do is take exactly what they're doing and just make small incremental changes in a bunch of different areas. That's, as an example, introducing an upselling strategy that they don't have, right? So there's automatic revenue, I automatically get paid, and they've got an improvement quickly, which is going to help us in the future when I try to encourage them to try something a little bit more dramatic and something that involves a little bit more resources. So in answer to your question, all different, the value proposition, I just got a testimonial the other day. We have a coach, he just did a world speaking tour, and he paid for the entire thing just selling memberships on the back end of his program, right? So the value proposition is really on steroids for the business coach. I mean, it makes them look like an absolute superstar. It's like virtual real estate. Again, example, think of this, you walk into a room as a coach trying to sell a coaching program. Well, when you get the address and you roll up and it's a basement suite, what do you say to yourself? Guy probably doesn't have the money. I could have wasted my time. I'd probably be better in bed right now, right? Well, whereas you roll up and, it's the third floor, the abstract painting, the pretty secretary, the oak desk, windows, and, the small business owner comes walking out in a suit from seven offices down. Now you say to yourself, you beauty, this guy's the real deal. Well, this becomes your virtual real estate. So when you go to the accountant, the bookkeeper, the networking organization, you can say, I'll tell you what, maybe I'm the smartest guy you ever met and maybe not. Tell you what, why don't I give you access to my small business program, have a look through, check out some of my videos, get some of my emails. Let's chat again in 14 days and see if we have something here, right? So again, so it becomes this brochure, where, it takes them to a whole nother level from a virtual standpoint. And then, notwithstanding, what we've also got is a series of $50,000 turnkeys on the back end. So imagine being able to go to a cosmetic surgeon, trying to sign them up as a coaching client, and being able to say, well, we're going to start our relationship with a $50,000 turnkey, right? And again, that may sound like a platitude or that I'm just pulling numbers out of fresh air. Well, just to be clear, how does that work? When you're a cosmetic surgeon, what you need to have is you need to enter the conversation somebody's having inside their head before they roll up. Well, a cosmetic surgeon is normally saying something like, nurture the body to provoke true envy. In fact, that's a true case study in a client of ours, right? Well, we changed that marketing message to get the body back you had before you had kids. Right? And if that's the marketing message they adopt, that's the way they answer the phone, that's the brochure, that's the business card, that's the landing page, that becomes their message, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's all built on the back end of the system. You walk into a daycare, again, you got to enter the conversation mom and dad are having in their head. Well, how about, versus saying service, quality, dependability, and that we're going to look after your kids and here's the price, how about you say introducing a new, a local Vancouver daycare that doesn't consider mac and cheese to be one of the 4 major food groups, right? Again, that's the marketing message they decide to go with, and then they roll that out. That's all on the back end of the system, and it's there for the coach to leverage and for the client to effectively, grab and just run with for all of $97 a month. So in answer to your question, we've got coaches absolutely blowing it out of the park. We got testimonials on top of testimonials. I mean, we have an insanely loyal client base, and like I said, we've got some clients we've business coaches told us that, look, we've just changed their existence because they're on average poor salespeople. Well, our system allows them to turn into good salespeople because the value proposition is completely changed when they've got these resources and this tool to go to them with.
Yeah,
so I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's like, we get a lot of guys really knocking it out of the park, and they're all using it in a different way.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking through some of the things that your 300 plus coaches around the world are using and what they're selling. So they're certainly selling the access to the membership site. It sounds like many of them are selling one-on-one coaching services to complement the membership. Some of them are selling these turnkey marketing programs. So, hey, we'll come in and do this marketing program rollout where we totally rebuild your message. So they're going out there and they have this tiered stair step from inexpensive to very expensive. But the system you've built, I mean, back when I was building my system consisted of a few hundred documents organized into a set of folders on my Dell server, right? And that was many years ago. And when I did what you did in Transition Online, now I've got membership sites and documents and all that kind of stuff. And that's what you've done. So you have your coaches out there using your membership site to be both their sales system and their coaching system. And because they're not relying on seminars and webinars, although some of them are obviously doing it with the World Speaking Tour, but because they're not relying on that, they have quite a few kinds of things that they can sell. And I think it's amazing. Now let's just give me an idea of maybe one of your better coaches, one of the ones that is doing, you've got these 313 countries. Okay, what is one of the better coaches doing per month, roughly, as a business coach? If you can pick somebody off the top of your head.
Oh yeah, a few $100,000 a year, right? And and they don't have. So, and again, some of them have coaches working underneath them, right? I'm using the coach, 2 arms, 2 legs, doing well, 20 coaching clients, and then significant members on the back end of their system. But yeah, a few $100,000 a year. No question.
Yeah, so that's very, very respectable. A few $100,000 per year. So you've got coaching, they've got coaching clients, and then again memberships into their site where they're some of their lower value clients, if you will, are educating themselves online. So this is good. So you are in the middle of growing your second $1 million business coaching firm. This one with a global impact, 300 coaches around the world. A very systematized, very robust, very automated infrastructure in terms of the coaching systems and tools and the sales systems and tools. So this is...
In fact, one of the new products, just to give you an idea, like what we do is we take this existing program and we build on it to make it a lot better, right? And rather than come up with new programs and new ways to reinvent the wheel, we just take the existing model and make it better. Well, one of the things we just adopted is like a startup site where you can now go to people who are, remember, entering a conversation that somebody's having in their head is what effective marketing is all about. Well, how many moms and dads and kids come home from school and they talk to mom and dad, and mom talks to dad about starting a business, right? Dad goes to work every day, stares at his boss and thinks, I want to go into competition with you. Well, the reason why he doesn't start is fear. There's no question about it, right? Masked up in a different way, but it's just about fear. Well, imagine if you had a program that the kids could buy dad for Christmas to hold his hand and kick him in the pants and effectively give him a step-by-step roadmap on how to become successful and how to implement, all the things that he needs to implement in order to be successful, like things like, the marketing messages for the cosmetic surgeon, right? And things a lot more basic than that, by the way. But that's another program that we have, because at the end of the day, our job is to help you make money on the internet legitimately, not hocus pocus and pretending and making up numbers. I mean, if you sign up 25 people in 12 months, given the program I just outlined, that would be $25,000 in your first 12 months if you charged $1,000 for a 12-month membership. And we've got, all sorts of people doing that in record time.
Yep. Well, you've built your second firm in a way that's very leveraged. It's very affordable for the business owners, very affordable for the business coaches. It really seems like the right kind of model as compared to the, what I think is now the obsoleted model that franchisors and other kinds of associations are clinging on to. And you're doing well for yourself. You're doing well for a lot of people. So congratulations on that. Any last word of advice for business coaches who are wanting to go the route of building a firm, something beyond themselves, Okay, and they're wanting to build something that has has some real mass. Any last words of advice?
Yeah, well, look, okay, yeah, for sure. Okay, you want to get to seven figures legitimately, you can't do it with two arms and two legs. Ain't gonna happen. You gotta, you gotta put, what on the chopping block, and you gotta be willing to, lose in order to win, and you must take on other coaches to help you. Otherwise, your company's not gonna grow. The second thing, so I know that sounds like a platitude, and there's not a textbook on the planet that wouldn't give similar advice, but hearing it sometimes, you cannot, two arms and two legs, you're going to struggle mightily. You better have very, very high fees, or you're just not going to hit seven figures, right? Number two, and I believe this to be insanely profitable advice for anybody listening, find a parade, stand in front of it, okay? Example, in 2000, I had buddies who could hardly spell their name. They made millions of dollars buying and selling homes and buying and holding homes, right? Because they were carpenters or builders, and they could fix anything. They could buy the wrong house in the wrong area for the wrong price and, screw it up and forget to put the ad in the paper to get the tenants. And between 2000 and 2007, they would still double their money. Okay? The mistake that they were making is a lot of the time they thought they were really smart, right? Well, 2008 set in, and guess what those guys are doing now, right? They're picking their nose waiting for this whole, this parade to happen again. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen the way it did between those years, not even close. Yep. So you want to find a parade and then stand in front of it. So what industry is growing at an insanely quick rate? Okay, like solar panels as an example, software, IT support. Just all you need to do is go into Google and punch in fastest growing industries, right? And then notwithstanding, how about fastest growing markets? Like if you live in Michigan and I haven't been to Michigan lately, but I'm guessing the economy is what the economy was there a year ago, and that's not very exciting. Whereas Texas never missed a beat, even in 2008, 2009. Right? Well, just all you need to do, it's very exciting, pick up a phone and phone into Texas as opposed to phone around Michigan. This is 2013. There's no reason why you can't operate on a global scale. Absolutely no reason. And also, again, and I'm in Canada, right, which we're reasonably well from the recession. So there's no reason. If you're American, Canadians think you're really cool automatically. Okay, well, call into Canada because the market's booming. We like Saudi up here with all the oil and gas flying around, right? Well, call in the markets that are booming. I lived in Australia for 15 years. Same thing. They're going through a bit of a average time now, but fundamentally they missed the recession almost completely, right? So if you're in Michigan, don't necessarily just call around Michigan. Find a parade, stand in front of it. Find something that's growing, jump in line, pick that as your niche, and start selling, coaching, and helping some small business owners big time.
Karl, you're awesome, and you're a business coaching hero because you just keep going out with big ideas in the right way and winning big. Even when a lot of other people are taking beatings, you're still swinging and winning. So congratulations, my friend. Thank you so much for jumping on the call. Looking forward to doing more webinars with you here shortly. And again, thanks and congratulations.
You bet, buddy. And I want to say the same to you, Eric. You do a wicked job, bud, and always appreciate it, and always fun chatting. Hope that was helpful.
Awesome. Thank you, buddy. Bye for now.
See you, buddy. Bye-bye.